Okay, we're live, boys and girls, for the weather report, January 31st. Oh my God, what's going to happen next? Probably February. That'll be cool. Can I still hear you, Danny?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're muted. Okay. Anyway, I have my little screen up. I'm going to get rid of my mic or my cam for the time being. But, okay, so last night I asked you at one point, what is the point you were trying to make? What would you have us biologists do? And I forget how you answered that. How did you answer that?
Well, let me remember. I think there were a lot of things that were points of contention, but the general idea is that if there are no laws of biology, it seems like if someone wanted to postulate some kind of, I guess, anomaly or some kind of mechanism that was outside of like what was normal, then it doesn't seem like that biology, like that number one, that should be disputed, or that if that sort of anomaly were to occur, that there wouldn't be a paradigm shift with respect to biology, something like that.
There wouldn't be a paradigm shift.
Right.
Because there would be like a one-off event.
Yeah, I mean, it's because there's not regularity in the strict sense. That's to say, laws, right? But I mean, we talked about ceteris paribus laws. Now, a lot was said about the nature of a law, but what I was trying to say is that there is a kind of necessity to laws, not in the law itself, but in terms of what follows from the law, even in ceteris paribus conditions. But like that, there were a lot of things being disputed that I don't think needed to be disputed in terms of what I was originally trying to argue.
Still not entirely sure what you would have us do or what you were originally trying to argue, basically. So, first of all, you went on Maddox's channel and you said that we were pushing back, that you were just trying to tell us that there were no laws of biology, which I think 98% of all biologists would agree with right now. And actually, law, the way you want to use a law, like the law of law of gravity, okay, or would that be called a law? A force law or something
like exceptionalists or something.
Okay, a physical law, so something that we could count on behaves that way all of the time at some scale, like Newtonian mechanics has laws that we can count on to behave at scale, at macro scale, right? And then, of course, they break down at other scales. So even that law is, I'm not sure if it's the kind of law that you were talking about, but you're talking about a necessity law, right? Like
A law. Well, the idea is that given like the way that we understand physical necessity or physical possibility is in terms of given L, which is some law, or given L, then X follows, and there's going to be a kind of necessity to that.
Okay. And by necessity, you mean like a hard form of necessity, right?
Well, like in the sense that like if you're given L, if you were to say X or not X could happen, I just don't see why, based on the kind of the way I use the term law, why that would be a law, right? If I say given some law, X may happen or X may not happen, right? It seems like we're just saying X may happen or may not happen. We don't need. Seems like that notion of law is kind of odious.
Still not quite following you here.
Well, like, so let's bracket ceteris paribus conditions because I think there is something there. But the point is that if I said that, let's say I eat breakfast, pretty consistently, and there are a few cases where I don't eat breakfast because I wake up late, right? We don't want to say that there's some like law of me eating breakfast because there are going to be cases in which I don't eat breakfast, right? So we're not going to cash that out in terms of laws. Now we could say like some people want to understand laws in terms of normal, but I think that what that does is really water down science. But I don't know. I think that's the idea.
Okay. So, okay, we'll talk about biological laws like population, genetics, things like that, fitness, selection, how basically Mendelian laws, that sort of thing. Those things, right, are not laws in any form of necessity. They're basically they're mathematical.
Well, they might be ceteris paribus laws, but those are going to be, there's going to be a set of conditions in which are observed before anything follows, but there's still going to be a kind of necessity following it. So it's going to be something like, given L, which L will involve some set of conditions, we'll expect to see X. So even there, you're not going to say not X, or not X may possibly happen given those conditions.
Okay. So if we have such a law, we don't call it ceteris paribus. We call it like a model, like a mathematical model. That we have a set of conditions, basically, and a set of opening conditions, or we could call them assumptions, and then we have a function, some math, and we always get the same output, always the same. So it's sort of necessity that you get this because of the mathematics. So that's how we model genetic systems in genetics, right? But that's not the real world. Nobody believes that's the real world. So, I mean, it's not going to happen, right? So this is how we determine how a population would change over time, given certain really restrict, like, okay, an infinite population, no assortative mating. That means anybody fucks anybody at any time. Doesn't matter. And there's no geographical regions or anything like that. It's just a real simplified model. And in that respect, we would refer to those things. We would call those things laws, I suppose. We could. But we usually don't use that term in biology. So I'm not sure what you're pushing back against exactly.
Well, I think
what you can't put. Okay, you cannot push back against that because that's math. That always works out the same.
The point, I think, with respect to biology is a unique discipline in which, if you could have all these anomalies and the practice is intact. But I mean, of course, there's a lot that is studied in biology, but more specifically with respect to a kind of macro ecological population, genetics, that those sorts of things. Maybe there's like some biochemistry stuff where like ceteris paribus clauses are more apparent, but the point is that we can talk about statistical trends with respect to behavior or what heredity, but I don't think that's going to qualify as a law in the sense that I'm talking about.
Okay. Still not sure what the complaint is.
Well, I think that the original thing that was said by Erica, remember this when I first asked the question, that's where everything started, was that there was some kind of a principle, which I take to be a law, about DNA being understood in terms of heredity. But I don't see such a principle, because we could imagine a physically possible scenario where there are a set of genes that emerge apart from any kind of life form, and in which there's not going to be a problem for how DNA is construed if that were to happen.
Yeah,
that's the original point.
Kind of.
Well, then you agree with me.
Okay, principle of heredity, basically. So we know how genes work, right? So you have a genome, and this guy inherits the genome with a very slight delta from that one, and these two inherit it, right, from that one. And then these two branch out here, and we have some more. But you're saying that here, This didn't happen at all. There wasn't no inheritance. This happened. This is like a happy. What do they call it? Something about a monster. Happy monster. Accidental. Totally accidental, right? Is that what you're saying? You know, it could have happened totally.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm saying, and we don't really observe that. It seems like I'm not aware of any literature that, in which there's some kind of mechanism in which would produce like a full blown insect or something like that, and so it just really seems like, given that strong, consistent set of observations, that there would be such a principle, but I don't think that's sufficient for establishing such a principle, because the idea is that if we were to confirm something that went against that sort of principle, right? I mean, it wouldn't really change how biology is done. Whereas, like, I think they're like the prediction, and people are saying in the chat they want to differentiate a law or a principle and a theory. You know, there might be utility in making that differentiation. But I'm just saying that if someone were to posit some kind of law of biology, nothing would be lost if, like, there would be, if there's some kind of exception to that principle, or to something that kind of violates the principle. Nothing. There, I don't think there's anything that there wouldn't be a kind of impact on biology. Is my view.
Okay, so basically along the timeline where eukaryotes developed, like eukaryotes developed right here, okay, and this is like 700 million years ago, might have been more than that, I don't know, but anyway, and this is 4.5 billion years ago. Okay, so if right here, if ID happened, if there's intelligent design, suppose some aliens backed up a starship and they dumped all the eukaryotes in the ocean at this point. So that would be the same as your accident. That's sort of thing. Okay. So we have ID from that. So from here forward, you're saying that nothing would be different about biology, and everything would work physically, and we know. So
I don't think anything would happen in terms of the other mechanisms that are postulated in evolutionary biology. I mean, it seems like it just doesn't matter that kind of event happened within, to a biologist. Okay, yeah, some kind of anomaly or intent. There's some intentional explanation for this. So what, right? We still have, let's just grant all the mechanisms. We have all these mechanisms of evolution. It's not like they're in trouble.
So who's arguing with you on that?
I was just contesting this, the idea that by appealing to a principle, that there's not going to be a kind of problem there, if by appealing to like I was just responding to Erica, right, and it led to all sorts of other issues, right? But I think that Erica would agree that we shouldn't understand DNA in a law-like way with respect to heredity, because there could be there's a physically possible scenario in which we get DNA, and in a way where another life form isn't some kind of part of the explanation.
But that never happens, and we've never seen it happen. We have no evidence that it happens, and there's no reason to assume it's going to happen, because it's 1/10 to the 10th to the 600th. So I mean, if it's so unlikely that we don't have to consider it, and we don't have any evidence for it, we're in the same position as intelligent design or God. We have no reason to consider this at all in science. It does not affect us in any way. We don't care. We're not even going to entertain that thought.
But I don't. It seems like you're just not engaging with me. Then
I'm not what?
It seems like you're just not even engaging with the hypothetical.
Not engaging with the hypothetical. You said
right. You're saying you're undermining the hypothetical in a way where, like, we shouldn't consider it given the improbability, or that it never happens, or we don't have any reason to think that it will happen.
Yeah, everybody.
Sure, I could grant that, right? But
everybody thinks that what you're going on about is meaningless to us. Everybody.
Well, I don't know what meaningless means here. What is the argument? Is there something wrong with my argument?
Whatever the argument is, you're saying that something magic could have happened, and if it did, it wouldn't affect us.
I don't know. I didn't say that. I don't know what you mean by magic in this context. Seems like you're just strawmanning me.
Drosophila appearing suddenly out of nowhere by a tornado would be as close to magic as I can imagine.
Well, I don't know what you mean by the term.
Magic, a real improbable accident. We could call it magic.
Oh, well, wait, you don't think that happens? I mean, most biologists think that it was incredible that life came from non-life, right? I mean,
no, most biologists don't think it was like an incredibly improbable accident. That's not true at all. You don't understand the field if you think that.
Well, it could be wrong. I could be wrong about that, but I mean, the point is that I mean, I think I would contest that, but I think we would need papers and studies. But I think I took college level courses on biology, and the professors there, which weren't theistic, in fact, explicitly said that I'm not religious or theistic, but whatever happened, 3.6 billion years ago was nothing short of a miracle. I think they just meant something like it was statistically improbable or something.
No. If they meant that, they didn't know what they were talking about. So,
well, that I don't think either of us is gonna. I mean, are we gonna try to support the claims that we've made here with respect to what most biologists think about abiogenesis in terms of its improbability?
Biologists that work on abiogenesis are trying to find probable pathways. Okay.
But that doesn't mean. Look, to say that. Oh, it seems improbable. Let's see if we could test for that kind of intuition. It's different than saying that that they don't think it's improbable.
Low probability, medium probability, high probability, extremely improbable. No one is looking for that pathway. We're not looking for the happy accident. We're looking for we're looking for like. You've seen these energy diagrams where basically you got a little hill, it basically has to climb that hill in order to get down to some settled state, right? Like that. So it wants to get down to this state, but it's got to climb a little hill here. We're looking for little hills, but I think we're going off on a tangent on that. So going back to the original thing, what the fuck? What was your point? That there was a highly improbable accident.
The point is that that's not going to falsify anything.
Not going to falsify anything. Okay, yeah, things could have, like what we do now, like today. There could have been Jesus could have rose out of the grave 2,000 years ago. But today, everything I do, I basically use natural principles to decide, why. If my car is not in the garage, I'm going to use a natural principle to figure out why it's not in my garage. I'm going to think somebody stole it. I'm not going to think Jesus rose up out of the grave and a miracle drove it off. So I don't know what you mean by the miracle. I still do not know what you would have us do as a result of this happy accident here.
Are you still not understanding what I'm saying?
Apparently, I don't understand.
I mean, it's fine. I'll re-explain it. The point is that if there's such a principle in biology, right, then that's presumably going to be something some kind of theory or law, which is to express a regularity of nature. But the hypothetical that I gave, right, doesn't seem to undermine any kind of way that biology is understood. It's physically possible, so we should discard such principles of like heritability with respect to DNA.
Why should we discard our principles when they work regularly? It's you already said they work. You said they work. There are laws about what is regular. Why would we discard them? Why would you? Okay, you're saying we should discard this model here, this C?
Well, look, first of all, to say that something is practical or works, that's a practical reason to accept something, not an epistemic reason.
Practical, not epistemic. Okay.
Meaning that you can have a theory that's completely false or a set of false beliefs, and it may be very practical for someone to hold them given their aims.
So you're saying that we shouldn't believe the math, even though the math works? We shouldn't.
What do you mean by?
We shouldn't believe that. Okay, if this math works right here, if this little piece of math works in my model, and it works for 99% of a population, okay, or even 99.99, which is usually what happens, percent of a population, you're saying that we shouldn't believe in it because it could have been a happy accident.
Believe in what?
The model, the mechanism for the model. Okay, we have the math, right? And we also have the physics and the chemistry to back up why the math works. So we know why the math works. We have a mechanism.
I'm kind of confused by what you mean by the math works. Let's take something like force equals mass times acceleration. Now, I'm not a physicist, but
let's use something kind of like let's see. Let's use something like your genome is 99.99% similar to your parents, to your mom and dad. Okay.
How's that anything to do with the law?
That is the law of heredity that you're talking about.
Wait, so if it's the case that there was a deviance, like a different value for that, then I just wouldn't be related to my parents or something? What would that? I don't understand the implication.
The implication is that 99.999% of your genome is going to be like one or like both of your parents, right? That is the implication. That happens all the time. You're more related to your parents, basically, than you are to your cousin. Okay, that's a principle of heredity. You're saying we should abandon that because why?
Wait, what's the principle of heredity? That you're more related.
Your genome is going to be more similar to your parents than it is to your cousin.
By similar, you mean related, right?
Yeah, similar. I mean, like if you add up the ACTGs, you're going to find very little. You're going to find less variation between you and your parents than when you find between you and your, say, second cousin, right? That is a principle of heredity. You're saying we should abandon that. Why?
Well, I'm saying that if there was some kind of offspring or generation, F generation, in which wasn't very similar, that it wouldn't mean that, you wouldn't come from that reproduced by, you wouldn't be the offspring.
Okay. Then you're adopted. So we found out you're adopted.
That doesn't, there's no such implication. I didn't say that.
What are the other options?
That you're just you were produced by your parents in a way where your DNA is not less similar than that with your cousin or something.
Okay, magic. I
don't see how that. I didn't say anything about that.
Well, we'll call it a highly improbable accident.
I'm saying some unexplained naturalistic cause or unknown.
Okay, so we have an unknown nat clause. Okay, that we don't know about. So okay. So would we detect this? Would we know about this?
It's in principle detectable.
Yeah, it is detectable. So basically, you wouldn't have any relation to your parents at all.
I don't know what you mean by relation. You mean similarity?
Similarity in your genome. Your genome would be totally different.
But in this case, so you're using relatedness, like if the fact that a relatedness or similarity is distinct from being offspring or being in the F generation, right?
You don't have to say that again.
Seems like you're distinguishing similarity or relatedness with being part of the F generation.
The F generation.
Yeah, like the subsequent generation from like parents, like P generation, F generation, or F1, F2, F3. I think it stands for filial or something like that.
Okay, F1. Okay, what now? What was I doing?
The point is that it seems like you're distinguishing relatedness or similarity with being part of the F generation.
I still don't understand what the hell you're talking about. I don't know. I'm saying that your genome is going to be those two chromosomes that you get from your mom and dad right here are going to be highly similar. Okay. Like really similar, more similar than anybody else. But you're saying that we have some unknown, unnatural law that we detect in the lab where all of a sudden they had a baby. Well, it happened on Shameless, I think. The two white people had a black baby.
I'm saying, well, it's not necessarily a law so much as some mechanism, right? Some naturalistic mechanism.
Yeah.
The point is that
yeah.
I think this, whatever you called it, the law of heredity, or I don't know didn't express some kind of connection between similarity and being part of the F generation?
Similarity in being part of the F generation. I don't understand your terminology.
Presumably, you think the similarity confirms that there was heredity or that there was offspring from a P generation.
Yeah, the two, basically you got one chromosome from mama and one chromosome from daddy. And you have two chromosomes, right? And these match.
The point is that I don't see why it's physically impossible, right? That someone could come from their parents and have very little similarity with respect to their parents.
We'd be shocked as hell if that happened.
Well, I would be shocked too. Yeah,
that would be an unknown natural law that we never heard of before. Nobody's ever detected before, and it would be something brand new, and papers would be written about it, and Nobel Prizes may be awarded. But no, that hasn't happened. So I don't understand what the hell your problem is.
Well, the point is that going to do you think the laws of physics would have to be different or something?
No.
Well, then it's physically possible.
It could be a lot of things. It could be a brand new kind of fucking. I have no idea how it would happen. I mean, it would take a lot of things to make that happen.
The point is that it's physically possible.
Not, yeah, in principle, but extremely. We've never seen it happen. Unlikely. So, and there would have to be a mechanism behind it of some sort that we didn't know about. So it'd be a brand new mechanism. So somehow two individuals got together, and maybe the mother she had an entirely different method of creating genes or something, or creating zygotes that had nothing to do with sex. It'd be like the virgin birth, maybe.
I guess what I'm saying is that the constraints laid out in biology are undermined by the constraints laid out by physics. I think that's another way of thinking about it.
What now?
Whatever constraints you posit for biology are going to be undermined by the constraints, or the kind of I should say freedom with respect to how we understand physics.
They're going to be underlay by physics. Yeah.
Not underlaid, undermined.
Undermined.
Right. So the point is that if I said that, it's impossible that I could throw a ball, 100 meters up in the air or something like that, right? Well, an impossible, there's some kind of constraint there. But then the point is that what in our physics, maybe this is not a good example, but if it's the case that our physics allows for that kind of possibility, then my claim that it's impossible is undermined.
Yeah, we would have found a brand new mechanism. Somehow that ball, maybe it was a hydrogen ball, and it flew by itself or something. I'm not sure. So, but we find another mechanism, and we find another physical mechanism.
I need clarification here. I think Scott said, I think it was Scott, or are you saying that biology is unfalsifiable?
I don't know.
I think in terms of disproving certain mechanisms in biology, I mean, it depends. Like, I guess you could falsify Cater's paribus laws. I'm not so privy to how to form those, but the point. So no, I mean, like if I said that, if they have Down syndrome, if this fetus has Down syndrome, I would expect to see these genetic, there would be predictions laid out by the genome, and I can confirm or disconfirm those genetic observations. That's falsifiable, but I just don't see how that's connected to any sort of laws or principles.
The principle of heredity. I mean, we know how heredity works. I don't know if you know this or not, but we know the genetics and the molecular biology behind how this stuff works. And it always works that way. And we've never found an instance where it doesn't work that way. We found all kinds of weird exceptions, like ceteris paribus, ceteris paribus. We found all sorts of other things that happen, like gene conversion, horizontal gene transfer, incomplete lineage sorting. I mean, we found all sorts of exceptions to those mathematical models that we have. And then we've expanded the models, but we've always found a mechanism for it, right? So we've always found a mechanism, and no physical laws have been violated, and biology has not been changed. It has just progressed.
Do you
We
think
found a
that
new thing.
in one of those anomalies that I described, that would somehow undermine all the findings in molecular biology? I just don't think so.
And okay, I agree. If magic happened, it would not make a difference. If ID
I don't
happened,
know. Once again,
if God intervened, it would not make a difference.
that's disanalogous. I'm talking about a naturalistic explanation.
You're talking about a naturalistic explanation.
Yeah,
So you're talking about an unknown naturalistic explanation. That's what I'm telling you. We discover every day. Papers are written every day about new mechanisms where we find new things that affect the whole mix. And it doesn't, of course, it doesn't shatter it. It doesn't have a gigantic impact on biology. It just progresses it.
Look, I'll just illustrate with the swan example that Dak gave, except I'm going to actually make it work, right? If I thought there was some law of swans, right, and I looked at all the little genomes of the swans, and I generated all these predictions, and yeah, every time they mated, we got white swans, and then I decided, oh, there's a principle here. There's a law. There's a kind of regularity that all swans are white. Now, what would happen is if I saw a different color swan, I should cast out the law, the principle. But it's all right to say that, there's statistically speaking, if I encounter a swan, it's likely to be white. But that's not going to be a kind of law, right? So the point is that, yeah, there's all these, very strong, consistent observations with respect to heredity. But if I were to see, why would I generate a principle as long as if it's physically possible that I could come to some kind of anomaly?
Why would you have a principle? Okay, if it's regular and we know the mechanism, why would we ever consider your hypothetical until it happens?
Can you repeat it?
Okay. We have a law. Okay.
Sorry.
Hello. We have a law of white swans.
I was told to mute, so I muted.
Who told you to mute? Oh.
In the chat.
Oh, okay. Anyway, we have a law of white swans. And a black swan has never occurred, and we have a mechanism that explains to us why the swan should be white. Okay. And then all of a sudden a black swan pops up. We say, oh, here's a previously unknown natural mechanism. We have to figure that one out. Now we have two mechanisms. So we know that black swans can pop up. But we still have this mechanism that says that white swans are going to pop up most of the time. Every now and then we'll get a black one.
Yeah,
so now we've learned something new.
There might be two different mechanisms for why one has a different phenotype than the other. But the point is that there's not going to be a law of the phenotypes, right? Like in the sense that for all swans,
yeah,
right?
There can be a law. Yeah, there can be a law.
Do you think there's such a law like all swans are white?
There could be a law that makes all swans white. Yes.
Hey, do y'all think it would illuminate this discussion if I read a little bit out of this article I saw, just Googled about the laws of biology?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and
somebody else's, look on the idea of laws in biology.
Can you share it? The screen?
Yeah.
And link it, please. Link and share. You know the rule.
Link and share. Let's see. The links here are so long, but let me see what happens. But see now, I feel under pressure.
Just relax, breathe, Scott. Just remember to breathe.
Yeah, this. What do you do when a link is like over 200 characters long?
Oh, okay. So you Googled it, so it's got your Google information in there. So how the fuck do you do that? What I usually do is go up and shorten it to just the site and the meat. What'd you Google?
It's from something called Springer Link.
Okay.
It's just. Well, let me go ahead and read this to you, and then we'll figure out how to get it in the link. blah, blah, blah. The first law of biology, all living organisms obey the laws of thermodynamics. The second law of biology, all living organisms consist of membrane-encased cells. The third law of biology, all living organisms arose in an evolutionary process. And so let me go ahead. Y'all continue to talk, but at least for this particular author, that's what a law of biology is framed as. And, I kind of got an instinct about that yesterday during that part of this discussion, because it seems that it all does kind of revolve around how chemicals form bonds, whether or not they can achieve some sort of dynamic equilibrium or disequilibrium inside the cell and things like that. So it seems to reduce down to physics and chemistry. But anyway, let me figure out how to get you a shorter link and y'all continue the discussion. How's that sound?
Okay.
I mean,
So-
adding to what Scotch just said, the two laws or two or three laws he just read out makes sense, right? The first one is, we all follow, like formulas. God damn it, I can't speak. Like forma. Go ahead, do whatever the hell you want. Sorry, I can't speak.
So
What?
just write down what Daddy wants answered, so we can have it easier to see and stuff.
My questions? That's more like my claims. But my claim is that there are no principles of biology.
There are no principles of biology.
There are no laws of biology and no principles of biology.
He
There are
just read 3 of them.
Yeah. So if there are no principles of biology, what do you teach to your students in biology?
I guess certain mechanisms, like normally given this mechanism, in these conditions, that like I'm fine with saying they're Caritas paribus laws, or but in terms of but there's just going to be that's just going to follow that given different conditions you'd expect something different.
Okay, what's the difference between ceteris paribus laws and the laws you're talking about, the ones you're pushing against?
That for the effect of Caritas paribus laws, that we could actually not see that effect given in some cases, right? Without any some kind of violation of the regularity of nature or something like that. Maybe I would have to. I think I might revise that, but I think that's just a cursory response. Like, so for instance, water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius at a particular pressure. All these there's all a myriad of conditions in which it freezes at 0 degrees Celsius, right? But you could have a case where it doesn't freeze at 0 degrees Celsius. But that's just saying that the conditions are different. But if it does, and notice that all that does is that you're just operating outside of the clause, right? Outside the hypothetical in which there are those conditions. But I think in a case of some kind of, like, for lack of a better word, fundamental law, you're not going to have privilege, that kind of privilege where there's that kind of effect, and you can preserve the Caritas paribus law, or preserve the law rather. So you can have the opposite effect of what follows from the law, and that would imply that you would have to revise the law. I think something like that. And it might be that all humans are able to do is something like give laws that are conditionalized, like in the Caritas paribus form. But I'm not so sure about that. I would have to talk to someone about that in depth.
Okay, I was able to get a nice top little link in there, Speed.
You did where?
Okay, it's in a nice top little link in there.
Oh, shit.
Speed.
Shit.
You did where?
Shit. Sorry, guys. I blew something.
Anyway, it's in the private chat now too.
Yeah, I know. Oh, is it in public too?
Yes.
Oh,
But
okay.
that was just somebody else's attempt, I guess, to list make law-like statements in the field of biology. And
Well, there were some problems with some of that. I think, like the second law that you gave, for instance, I think that just comes analytically, meaning like just the notion of organism would imply what follows from that. So I think that's just giving some kind of definitional claim about biology, which those are going to be necessary. Those are going to be necessary in virtue of the meanings of the words, right? So if an organism didn't maintain homeostasis, did not reproduce, did not, there was no metabolism, right? There's all these conditions for how biologists, the criteria for what makes up an organism, and that's just going to be understood analytically. So there's a sense in which those are not really laws, so much as that's the concept. In the first one, it seems like we're just saying something like that which makes up organisms are susceptible to physical laws, but I'm not so sure. I would have to maybe someone can further explain the first one, and I forgot the third one.
All living organisms arose in an evolutionary process.
Well, but presumably there was a first organism, right?
I don't think you could support that.
Well, yeah. You think there was never? You think it's an infinite regress of organisms?
No, I don't think there's a line that you could put down that would say this is the first organism.
Well, it does depend on your concept of what an organism is, but whatever that is, it's obviously not like some kind of eternal entity. It had to begin.
Okay, I have a quick question. Is it possible for two individuals to have identical genomic content but not be related?
Is it physically possible?
He didn't say physically possible. It's just, is it possible for two?
Is it possible in principle?
Oh, well, look, if you're using logical possibility, yes, that's just trivial.
You know what? Immutable, hold on. Immutable, just come in here and ask him yourself. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, immutable. What the fuck? What is your reluctance to join the stream? I mean, Jesus.
Where's David? Where's what's it? Daniel Nicholson when you need him.
Yeah. Did you hear that Maddox was really irritated about our the cell is not a machine?
I'm sorry that he was irritated. I'm not too worried about the opinion of a guy who believes the Earth is 6,000 years old.
Yeah. Well, at
least in the realm of science.
The question I have is, why is he worried about what we said about the paper? He said he's going to do a comeback video on what we said. Why doesn't he do a comeback video on the paper? I mean, why doesn't he go right to the paper and read it like we're doing?
I mean, if I made some comment, like I said, I was concerned that I made offhand comments about people, during the thing, but, that's the people, and I apologize for offending anybody, but
I don't.
The paper itself has some great implications, and it's very interesting. And if those laid out facts upset him, then sorry.
Part of the stuff that you're talking about, Danny, in your extremely unprofessional way, is the stuff that paper is talking about, and that there are paradigm shifts that may well affect the way we do research and what we look for. And so those paradigm shifts are going on all the time in biology.
Speaking of paradigms, may I ask Danny a question?
Yeah.
Danny, is there a particular branch of science that you think has laws, does law in the right way? And would you be willing to state what branch of science that is?
Well, it's whatever science studies the most fundamental aspect of the physical.
So you're thinking of physics?
Well, if that's how you construe physics, but there might be a problem there.
No. I'm asking how you construe it, because I'm trying to get an idea of what your thinking is about, legitimate laws. Are you saying
why am I not studying
all of science has no legitimate laws, or just biology?
I think there are natural laws, for sure, but that's a tentative view. I'm quite confident, but I think that there are certain skeptical considerations that I haven't come across yet that I need to explore.
Yeah, I must. Have you reviewed a lot of philosophy of science writings and stuff on this, or are you getting into that just now, or?
Only as it applies to the mind. So a lot of these ideas come from the implications on philosophy of mind. But no, generally speaking, my philosophy of science knowledge is quite lacking.
Yeah, because the only philosophy of science I've ever actually read is like Thomas Kuhn back in the 60s. But I know people have criticized even his particular views of the paradigm shift and things. But yeah, it just sounds like doing some readings and specifically for the philosophy of science or philosophy of biology would be the thing to do.
Yeah, I'm quite interested in it. It's something that I'm planning on doing a further investigation of, because there's other things other in science that are worth exploring other than like laws and theories, like what they are. Because obviously, right, there's things like abduction right now. I don't know if that's employed by the sciences, but there's a question of whether, that kind of empirical investigation is scientific.
I think you've done a really poor job of expressing what your point is.
I thought my claim or my argument, which one?
Your point in general.
My claim is that there are no principles or laws of biology. I've said this many times.
Okay, what does that? What implicate? Pick a principle and tell me why it isn't there. Principle of biology.
Well, like the one Erica said, like that DNA is somehow understood in terms of heredity.
Yes. Okay. So DNA is not understood in terms of heredity.
No.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't think that's not a principle that I hold.
Okay, so you don't believe in heredity.
That doesn't follow.
How does that not follow? Okay, you said there is, okay, DNA is not, how did you put it? DNA is not, say it again.
That DNA is only understood in terms of heredity. That's some kind of principle, right?
DNA is only understood in terms of heredity.
Meaning presumably she was talking about how it emerges, right? That, but the point is that we could talk about cases in which, potential cases in which you can get genes and DNA that don't seem to violate our physics, apart from any kind of previous life form. I don't see why that's physically impossible. So that's why I don't hold a principle. In the same way that I'm not going to hold to a principle that all swans are white, right? I'm not going to hold a principle that there are no green humans, because I think that it's perfectly plausible. Well, I'm not going to use that word. It's possible, physically possible, that that I see a green human.
Okay.
Wouldn't be hard to make one.
Exactly.
Yeah, with some algae. Or
Yeah, we could
or some chlorophyll.
We could basically replicate what caused plants in the first place in ourselves. Yeah. Don't know what else it would do to us though. How would we turn out? No way to know, but we'd probably survive it. We'd probably have offspring that could photosynthesize and produce some of their own energy from essentially eating dirt.
I don't know about you, but I really love to have women with purple skin. There you go.
Nope.
Like when y'all saw all the aliens and Avengers, like I remember the first, not even the Avengers, but the first Star Trek movie, he was having sex with that green alien, right? I mean, I didn't think, wow, what a violation of the principles of biology or something. I mean, I just
yeah.
Except
that wasn't supposed to be Earth life, by the way, and it was way too human for that.
Well, she could have been from Earth. We don't know.
So
that was supposed to be from a different planet.
If we're talking, yeah, if we're, you know what, I could go to a whole tangent about Star Trek lore, but whatever.
Don't.
But by the way Danny seems to be defining law and principle, and he seems to have reverted back to on law to where he was before he seemed to have gotten it. But the way he's defining them, I would agree with him that in that sense there are no laws or principles of biology.
In that
Principle,
ultimate-
for example, being a principle, for example, being a base of a belief system. I don't think anybody in their right mind would stoop to having a belief system based on biology as opposed to just believing the evidence. Belief systems are things that are coerced on us.
Yeah, but how the hell? He said DNA is only understood in terms of heredity. I think that's a bad statement. I really doubt Erica said that.
Yeah.
Well, I could be
if somebody said
wrong.
that, they
What
made
did
a
she
mistake.
say? What did she say?
She would say that evolution is only understood in terms of heredity. I don't know. We'd have to play it back.
No, she didn't say that. No,
Well-
she actually used the word principle, first of all, right? And she used
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, there are principles.
But how did she mean the word?
well that was why I engaged with her. And that's now if you
Okay.
remember, y'all are not I mean, I don't know, Dak, you didn't I don't know if you were there, but I was like, look, I could
not
just
sure
be
either.
misunderstanding you. I may not be understanding what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, that can happen.
I said that to her twice. Once in the initial call, and then yesterday at night at 9 p.m. I said, this could be 5 minutes, because if she just said principle as some kind of general tendency, like where like I, some very mostly consistent,
Well,
then I'm
it's-
not going to dispute that.
She
Right,
probably meant it more basally than that, but I don't think she meant it in the way that you seem to be taking it.
Yeah,
It's something similar, but not quite the same thing.
Which is
And
why
this
I
is
was
the
very
thing with-
confident
This is the thing
that I
with
wasn't.
words. They're, meanings of words are kind of fluid as they pass from one person to another. They tend to change meaning between the person who gave the word out and the person who received it.
Which is why I was very cautious when I approached her and saying, let me understand you. But then what happened is the hyena wolf pack came in and got really triggered when I said that there are no principles or laws of biology, when I don't even know what Erica was saying.
Well, if they understood it the way I expect they probably understood it, I can understand why they'd have that reaction.
Yeah,
Right,
me too.
because-
To be honest,
I mean,
yeah.
this is why I've been inventing languages to try to fix that kind of thing.
Well,
Danny.
saying that your opposition got triggered. Go ahead.
I'm talking. Okay, midnight. You go ahead first. And then
No, I was just gonna say, Danny's like, oh, the hyena pack got triggered when when you said there's no principle of biologies. Well, okay, like accusing somebody of being triggered just because they're trying to push back against a claim they know is false is disingenuous. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it very well may have been perceived
okay,
as
my turn.
triggered.
You say basically you're operating within your particular unique language game, which I believe changes on a moment by moment basis, but maybe not. Okay, your language game, and then you're going ahead and attacking us on our language game, and then you're complaining because we're triggered when you're coming in and telling us that we have a problem with natural selection, we have a problem with the principle of heredity, we have this problem and that problem. And then you go on John's stream and you talk about how triggered we were and how irrational we were. And all you're doing is you're invading our space, our language game, without completely understanding it. If you want to talk to us about biology in terms of biology, then you use biological language, the language of molecular biology, which you
I'm
don't
saying
seem to know anything about.
The way that you
You
all
know
used the
nothing
terms
about.
yesterday were susceptible to serious reductio ad absurdums, right? Serious reductio ad absurdum.
Not as
In
far
your
as I could tell.
language game, it is. In your language game, it is. Not in
I don't know
ours.
what that means.
In ours, we
Let
know
me clarify
exactly
what he
the
means.
fuck we mean.
Let me clarify what he means by language game. Okay, languages have rules to them. He's basically talking about a local dialect. We're speaking a dialect. I have my own idiolect. You have your own idiolect. If you speak your idiolect and I speak my idiolect and we don't find a common dialect that we can share, we're going to miscommunicate. It will happen. And so they're speaking a dialect that has enough in common that they're basically understanding each other. And basically what he's saying is you've been hanging out in a group that's got a different dialect and you're taking that dialect into a different group and expecting everybody to understand you. And
then complaining
it will run into problems.
I was just pointing out that when I tried to understand Erica and made some claims about what laws were, right? The conversation was obstructed by people that had to respond to the claim that biology has no principles or laws, right? Now, the point is that if you don't take my construal of a law or a theory outside of Ceteris Paribus clauses, which I granted could exist on biology, right? Then you have serious reductio ad absurdums, like the triviality of saying that X happens except when it doesn't.
I don't see how any law is
that is
we
generally
don't call
true.
them Ceteris Paribus laws for one thing. Stop using the term. They're basically they're principles, mathematical principles that we have worked out that are backed in mechanisms, and they have exceptions if all things are not equal. So I mean, what wouldn't be like that?
What he means by that term, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but what he means by that term is basically something that should hold consistent through a certain change if nothing else has been changed.
Right. Given a set of conditions, we would expect to see X from Y.
Which is just a shortcut.
But the point is that you can get X
doesn't work like that way in the universe.
It's not everything. It's actually a principle that's used in physics that something is invariant with regard to a certain thing. In other words, that if you change that one thing, it's the only thing that changes. Nothing else in the math in physics is what they're talking about. Nothing else in the math changes. If you for example, in a particular equation, if you change the mass, nothing else in the equation changes. It doesn't have an effect. That's basically what he's talking about. And I hope that helps a little as far as clearing.
I appreciate you, Jack, because for the first time, you're the only one that's not engaging in the meta conversation. Speed likes to talk about the meta conversation instead of engaging with what I'm saying.
What?
Do you know what a meta conversation is? It's a conversation about the conversation. I'm not interested in that, Speed.
I don't think that's so much what he's doing, but there's a little bit of that going on.
You're going to look. Did you not hear what he said with respect to me going to John Maddox and saying how irrational, or this and that and that about the way I'm behaving and using different words? That's just meta. I'm not interested in the meta.
If you'll let me get to it, I think he's in a sense trying to do the same thing as I have just tried to do, which is to clarify where the conversation is going and
he wasn't trying to do that.
Bring it into an understanding of. That's what it seemed like to me, from my point of view.
When he says no,
it looked to me like he's trying to figure out what went wrong with the communication and fix it. Am I wrong, Steve?
No, Speed? You're not wrong. I'm trying to figure out.
Wait, so when I made a claim and you just went like no, you think that was trying to clarify what I was saying? That literally just happened 30 seconds ago.
Which one of us are you talking to?
Are you having the meta conversation now?
Yes. I'm having a conversation about you're having a conversation about the conversation.
So we're having a meta.
Okay, let's do this.
We're meta.
And I'm telling you, it's very boring.
About Danny having a conversation about Speed having a conversation about the conversation.
Should we have a conversation about that as well?
We should.
Save that one for later.
Metacube. Metacube.
That will be on our new meta YouTube channel.
Well, you're not communicating.
We might not resolve the communication completely today. Maybe we won't resolve it tomorrow. But the thing is, if we can at least get to where the problem is, we've gotten closer, and that's important.
That's why I'm writing down things.
I'm quickly approaching an opinion that I didn't want to approach. But I think what you have, Danny, is a failure to communicate.
Danny, do you think
you fail to understand?
Hey, Danny, do you think the same problem applies to geology? The field of geology?
Yes, probably.
Okay.
And what would you change? Where would you make that change? Who would you have make that change? What would the new dialogue be like?
I guess just not to hold a false belief about a principle.
A false
belief? Well, let me ask you this, Danny. The stuff that you're saying that you think people are calling laws or principles that you don't think are laws or principles, do you think they're useful?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're not in disagreement about that. As far as I know, everybody else here thinks they're useful as well. Do you think they are very useful, or maybe just a little bit useful?
Very useful.
Okay, so I don't see any real big disagreement going on. I think it's all
Nope.
over the terminology, and
Nope.
I could be wrong, but I really think this is mainly a terminology thing going
I
on.
think Danny.
And there is some difference in understanding, but I think the difference in understanding is overlapping with the difference in terminology and causing it to appear there's more disagreement than there really is.
I think you are straw manning our position as being absolutely certain or having these crystal clear principles of heredity and DNA. And it's much the same as what Cell Cordova has done with fitness and the Fisher-Wright theorem. And that isn't the case. No one believes that there aren't other conditions involved in these things.
You're misunderstanding my point.
Okay, Danny, can you steelman what you think is Speed's position? You know what steelmanning is, right?
I'd prefer that he tell us what his point is again, because I keep missing.
I'm just saying,
I've already
maybe he's
said-
accidentally strawmanning your position. If he can steelman it, maybe we can find the problem and fix it.
Yeah.
I've already granted that it seems like there could be cateris paribus laws about biology, like something like Mendel's laws or whatever, right? I've said that that's fine, right? That's conceptually not problematic for me. Someone could convince me otherwise. I don't really have a strong belief about that. But in terms of these other kinds of laws,
I would disagree with it.
Point 1 in biology, point out another kind of law.
the one that Erica pointed out.
What did she point out? What is a law that she stated?
Something like DNA is understood in
Like
terms of heredity.
Like isn't going to cut it. You have to tell us what the law is. What law of DNA are you talking about?
Do you want? Okay, well, do you want me to go back and get her exact wording and then bring it here?
You know genetics, so tell me a law that doesn't. That basically,
in terms of heredity, is one of the ways that
DNA
is understood.
A law. You mean a cateris paribus law, or just a law full blown?
The law that you're complaining about. There must
the
be
one. Erica is the one that started the conversation. That's what I contested.
I think you better go get her exact words and try to figure out what law she mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah, let me go get it.
Okay, let me be clear first. So the law that she mentioned a law of biology or genetics, and you're gonna bring me that law, and that is a law that you had a problem with.
Yes.
And it is a law that's accepted in genetics and biology.
Who knows? But it was accepted by Erica.
Accepted by Erica.
Well, if you can get her exact wording, maybe we can find out, where the problem lies. And better yet, if she can be in on the conversation at the time and maybe clarify what she meant, not just what she said. But we'll see. Sounds like a plan.
Are we supposed to be talking about Maddox at all?
Okay. While y'all are doing that, I'm looking up. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm getting Erica's exact words.
All right, Danny, I do have a question. Would you agree? And this is my point of view. Would you agree that in the context of heredity is one of the ways that DNA is understood? That there is an understanding within that context. Okay, so we're not in disagreement there.
Yeah.
Seemed to me. I asked that because it seemed to me that what you were picking on is that you got the impression that she was saying that was the only way it was understood. And maybe I'm wrong, but
that's the impression that I got. Right, that if it's there's a difference between saying, "Oh, I can understand DNA in terms of how it's passed on to future generations," but to say that it can only be understood that way is a much more serious claim, right? And I thought she may have. But that's the thing. Wait, one second. I'm almost done. Okay. That's the thing, right? When she made that claim, I thought it was so out there that I knew that she was saying something else. So I wanted clarification.
Of course
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
Well, what she may have meant by that, and I don't know because I'm not her, but what she may have meant by that is the fact that because of the fact that DNA is inherited, that it is passed on from generation to generation, it's really impossible to understand what DNA does without understanding that fact. And I would agree with that because that is a part of how DNA does what it does. And I don't mean just generation to generation in terms of multicellular life form to multicellular life form, but even the individual cells within that multicellular life form. Every cell inside of you that reproduces passes on its DNA from one parent cell to two daughter cells. That is heredity there as well, even though we don't generally think of it that way because it's not passing a whole generation of humans. So in that sense, yeah, to really understand DNA, you do have to understand inheritance at least somewhat.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I don't even know. The tail end of I caught the tail end of it because I was looking for the video, but I don't think that's necessary.
Should I repeat it or attempt to?
I'd have trouble. I guess I have trouble with that, with the idea of understanding it only through this mechanism. I think the only way.
Like I said, I wouldn't say only. I'm just saying that I think that is an essential part of understanding DNA thoroughly. To thoroughly understand DNA, I think that is an essential part. You can understand aspects of DNA otherwise.
Or to understand biology or genetics or evolution, the only way to understand that is through heredity.
Okay, I don't know how to deafen myself because I have to listen to the video to find the clip so I can get exactly where I had where I asked Erica for clarification. So I'm gonna leave and come back. Okay.
Okay.
Well, Speed should be able to mute you for a little while, and never mind.
Yeah, I can mute him. I can mute him, but he can't mute himself, so he would hear us over talking. So
Holy shit! Did the IQ just go up?
Oh my god!
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
Did I just what?
No. I said, holy shit! Did the IQ just go up?
No, seriously, I think he's doing pretty well. I mean, he's a bit of a fish out of water, but
I don't have to remove you.
He's adapting. Give him time. I mean,
well, Mutable, how you doing, buddy?
At least he seems to be trying, and that's my perception. Maybe I'm wrong, but he does seem to be trying.
I think he has trouble bringing the point home.
Yeah, well, that's not uncommon.
Yeah, that's not uncommon, I guess.
I mean, just like I said, give him time. I mean, as long as you're willing to have him in here and let him talk, well, give him the time to evolve, right?
I just felt like beating something today, so.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, that's gonna happen too.
That was one of your raccoons.
I don't know. Harming raccoons is against my moral principles.
Oh, I wasn't really thinking that you'd harm the raccoon.
Or even.
I was kind of thinking the opposite, but oh well.
Oh, I see.
By the way, I'm trying to be helpful in here, and if maybe not while I'm in the process of doing it, but if something I do strikes someone as being the opposite of helpful, I would appreciate if you'd let me know.
Okay.
So have we talked about Maddox yet, or have we just been?
Oh, not at all.
Or have we just been entertaining Danny and this curiously?
I invited Danny in originally because I wanted to go over some of the shit he came up with last night and get some clarification.
And that was your first mistake.
Yeah.
So, by the way, just
look at there, raccoons.
Just
nice.
To clarify why I said not while I'm in the middle of trying to help, it's because I might be going somewhere that I haven't gotten yet.
Let's see. I think I'm going to switch over to a different kind of sound. So, Maddox, did anybody watch the beginning of the stream last night when we were still live?
What are the animals in the video that was just running?
Those are raccoons.
Oh, okay. I couldn't tell because I'm looking on my phone and I can barely see the picture at all. It's just really tiny.
Those are some very well-fed raccoons.
Yeah, he feeds them like 8 pounds of wieners.
Yeah.
My goodness.
That'll work. Turn my phone sideways. Yeah, it's hard to not get in the way of the camera that way, but makes the image a little bit bigger.
Hey, Mutable, I haven't had my nap yet today.
That's not my fault.
No, this time it's not your fault, actually.
We're doing part 2 at 8 o'clock today.
7.
We are doing part 2 when Scott said we were doing part 2.
At 7.
That's 7.
Well, that was just a proposed number.
Yeah.
That was just a proposed number.
You can't give Speed leeway here.
Oh, okay. Okay,
There
7
is-
o'clock.
There is no principle involved. It could be otherwise. There's a possibility. It could be 7:05.
The only things immune to that are mathematics.
Yeah, I think so.
Mathematical laws are about as strict as you get.
Who the fuck is this John Maddox guy?
Yeah, and they've got some gray areas too.
Oh, please, let's not go into why group theory doesn't bother defining what a group fucking is.
Fuck, here he is.
No, I was actually thinking more in terms of, like, for example, when they teach young children that you can't subtract a larger number from a smaller number because there's no such thing, and then later on they teach them how, and then they teach them that you can't you can't make a square root of a negative number, and then later they teach them how, and
And they,
you know,
they call them imaginary numbers, and then you tell them to use their
they're
imagination.
real.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. They're imaginary numbers and they're real, and and then just when you think you got it figured out with the complex number plane, you encounter quaternions, which have intersecting complex number planes at perpendicular directions.
Yep.
with three different square roots of -1, each one on its own complex number plane, and an infinite number of other square roots of -1, negative ones, not on a single one of those planes, but on an intersection of those planes.
So is this that Maddox open mic thing?
Yep. Shall I roll?
Sure.
Sure, you want to?
Probable.
Blah, blah,
Decided
blah.
to do a open mic stream after listening a little bit to the madness that's going on over on Peter Pudding's channel, as well as the brief observation I had earlier today with another stream on Pudding's channel. And I honestly just don't know how this level of stupidity is able to continue to perpetuate if evolution is true. I mean, it really is.
Oh, Matt, foreskin.
Scale.
Maddox, it's like I'm looking into a glass mirror right now because I'm asking the exact same question about you.
What was he referring to?
Or,
I think I missed that part.
Or is the cell a machine paper that we went over?
That. Okay, that's right. You did say you were going to review something of someone reviewing that.
Yep.
The levels of meta are
No
really,
kidding.
we need to start a meta YouTube channel.
The meta is strong.
Full scale madness. I don't know how to deal with it. But one of the things that I got a great deal of entertainment about earlier that has partially led to this is the one and only Immutable Destiny, who...
Oh, here we go.
Man.
Oh my god, he mentioned you. You're famous.
I'm putting... he was talking about... they had this little stream about the... is the cell a machine? And they went off this whole tangent of how it's not. And I'm just like, am I actually hearing the words coming out of this person's mouth right now, claiming that it's not, when the description he's giving literally fulfills the type of things he was pointing out. It's extreme. This level of stupidity was such an extreme.
Okay, now
Maddox, I shouldn't have to explain this to you, but
I'm having a hard time hearing it, so I didn't understand a lot of what he said.
Oh, really?
He's complaining.
It's just
about
muffled.
So he's complaining about the fact that when I say the cell isn't a machine, I'm using terms that kind of would make it appear as if though the cell was a machine. The natural issue here being language is a limited kind of thing. It is. There's only so many words you can use, and there's only so many ways I can refer to something as not being a machine that inevitably involves those terms.
But wait a minute, there's something even more idiotic here in what Maddox is doing. We were reviewing a paper called "Is the Cell Really a Machine?" Where the guy is pushing back on the idea of the cell being a machine, No one. We were
And they-
reviewing the paper. No, you did not say the cell is not a machine. None of us said that. We reviewed the paper.
They also clearly defined what they meant by machine, how they were,
Right.
how that word was being used, and what, in that sense, what exactly it was that they were disagreeing with. Because if somebody means machine in some other sense, they weren't disagreeing with that.
I don't know if you want to revert back to, but I got Erica's quote.
Okay.
It was the quote was something like, "We have to start with certain facts, similar to how Newtonian has gravity. There are certain biological facts like DNA is heritable." And then I stopped the clip there. That's what she said.
That's what I was saying earlier. Yeah, so that's exactly what she meant then. What she's talking about is that if you don't understand that DNA can be inherited, or in other words, that it's passed on from generation to generation, then you don't understand what DNA is and what it does and how it functions.
That was the point of contention, right? I'm saying that you can understand what DNA is without knowing that it's inherited.
Okay, what would that understand?
You can understand a little bit of it that way, like how it transposes into RNA and how the RNA can produce proteins. But it would be a very shallow understanding of DNA.
Yeah, what do you understand about DNA?
So the thing is, like, even if you understood all of those interesting, kind of chemical reactions and transformations that DNA undergoes, you still wouldn't be able to understand that DNA is quote unquote unit of inheritance in terms of what we're describing,
which is the main reason why it's important to us.
Right.
It just seems to be some kind of accidental property of DNA.
There's people that would disagree with you, but
it is what makes it important.
Sure, I'm not. Never will I dispute something being important, right? I mean, in that sense, but like I'm just saying that. Well, what if they just rejected that DNA is to be understood in that way? And I mean,
then they could have very, very little understanding of DNA.
Well, that's why I asked Erica.
But they have very little.
That's why I asked Erica. Is that the point where you just say that's not biology anymore? And that's where I was trying to get clarification. But that's what
it could still be biology, but like I said, it would be a very narrow understanding of biology. It's kind of like when somebody tries to debunk evolution by saying, well, I haven't seen a dog give birth to a cat yet, show me that and I'll believe evolution happens. That's they've got literally no understanding of evolution at all at that point. Now, that's not to mean that they don't have a clue in things other than biology, but at least in biological evolution, they've just shown they don't know what it is. So yeah, DNA is, of the most importance to humanity is understanding that DNA is what we inherit a lot of our traits through. Now, not 100%. There's epigenetic information as well, but the vast majority of the traits that we inherit are passed on by means of the DNA, and understanding that goes a long way toward understanding DNA. Without that, you could have a rudimentary understanding, but DNA, your understanding of DNA would be very, very little different from understanding that it's a chemical and it does stuff. And it might not even be that, because some people don't even understand that DNA is a chemical. They literally think it's just a code. Like, you can program it in a computer and a human would pop out by magic or something. Some people actually, and I'm not straw manning anyone, some people actually have that bad of an understanding.
They won't even try to look up what it actually means, it seems like, either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if they did, if they actually sincerely cared about understanding what it meant, I'm sure they could find out in a very short time. Some people just don't care to know. In fact, some people will avoid knowing. If they start to get a clue, they'll shut it out and do the best they can to forget that they ever came across it.
And that's just
ignorant.
Yes, that's just sad.
Yeah, but it happens.
Check the description, TopDawg.
And I understand part of the reasoning behind that, because a lot of times it's religious. A lot of times It's people who are afraid that if they have any doubts about their religion, their God's going to catch them doubting and they're going to get punished for it. Like, what if they were to choke to death, or lightning struck them or something while they're in the middle of having doubts and they don't have time to take it back or pray for forgiveness? People go through those kinds of mental dilemmas.
But you would think they would say to themselves, okay, well, God created the thing I'm learning about, so I better learn about it.
Yeah, but they don't, because like I said, they're afraid. It depends on how a person has been indoctrinated and what their personal beliefs are. But when somebody is afraid, I mean, if they believe their God knows everything, but they're afraid their God is going to find something out, there's a problem right there. But the thing is, if they're afraid of having doubts, they won't even stop to think about stuff like that because it's too close to having doubts. They'll get cognitive dissonance and back away from that thought and just shut that out. I don't want to think that. I won't think that, because they're not trying to tell themselves I don't want to think that. They're trying to tell their God I don't want to think that. Forgive me for coming that close to doubting.
So, can you say what Erica said again, Danny?
Oh Christ! Come on.
Something like there are certain starting assumptions in biology similar to physics, like Newtonian physics, where you have like laws of gravity, that and such, right? And so the analog here, she didn't use the word analog, but something like in biology, there's this biological fact that DNA is inheritable or heritable. I don't know. I still can't.
It's a heritable. Yeah.
It's a unit.
But you can say either one.
Okay. Does anybody else have a problem with what Erica said?
Nope.
I don't.
I'm just saying that it can't be understood in principle that way.
What do you mean?
What is your understanding of it? Okay, tell us what your understanding of DNA is.
I guess some kind of sets of physical states with a particular covariance.
Okay, that's
like a kind
much.
of covariance that is not found in most other physical states.
Really?
Do you understand that it's made of nucleotide pairs?
Well, I understand that it's a set of molecules and that.
Okay, well, it is a molecule, but it is a molecule made of other molecules. Yes, they're connected together. There's a sugar base that connects them. It's called ribose. That connects the nucleotide pairs to each other. There's one-stranded DNA and there's two-stranded DNA. A single-stranded DNA.
No, I'm familiar with all the phosphate backbone and the hydrogen bonding and the pyrimidines and the purines. I know all the biology behind it, but
okay. So, what is your understanding of it? That differs from this is heritable.
That different. Well, that I guess it explains certain phenotypes. I mean,
it doesn't really actually. It relates to them, but it doesn't actually explain them. It explains them almost in the same sense as saying, God did it as an explanation. The fact that we have a C here rather than a G and we end up with this trait doesn't really exactly explain how the trait got there. But it does give you a place to start looking, and scientists have looked and they have found, okay, we got this C here instead of a G, and then this chemical reaction happens because of the C being there, and then that chemical reaction produces this protein, and that protein does this thing, and so then they find the mechanism for how that C being there does what it does. But just the fact that it's there isn't an explanation in itself. You need much more than just the DNA to do that. And that's, I think, that's relates to what she was saying about, that you need to understand heredity in order to truly understand DNA, because
what I mean is something
need to understand heredity, but the chemistry around it as well.
What I mean is something like DNA or my genes explain the different, why I have brown hair instead of blonde hair, or something like that.
They don't on their own. Your genes combined with other factors.
Look, yeah, there could be a myriad
the chemistry
of other
in your cells, the chemistry in the womb, possibly, whether or not you're in bright sunlight. But it's It's complex chemistry. If you really want to understand complex chemistry, there are various facets that you do have to understand in order to be able to understand them. And she's right that heredity is one of those base things that is very important to understanding that complex chemistry and understanding it well. If you want to have a rudimentary understanding, you can probably do it without that, but that's all you'd get.
Here's something to consider as well, right? In terms of just similarity among life forms, is that humans and say like bacteria, right? They're not overly similar in DNA, but they're sufficiently similar. They're like 65 or 70% similar in terms of overall genomic content and
To
genes conserved.
to what?
Huh?
To what?
To humans. So
Okay,
most,
that's
so like
what you
most
meant. Just
bacteria,
clarifying.
yeah. So most bacteria, like in humans, shared 65 to like 70% of like overall genes and
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
that.
of their DNA, not ours.
Right, of their DNA with respect to with respect to yeah. But that's something where it's like, okay, so it must be something more. You have to kind of invoke that there is something more, in fact, that causes that kind of spikes along differentiation than just overall gene content or what's
Yeah.
in the DNA.
Well,
And
and part of that is other genes, but part of it is also the chemistry in our cells that supports those genes and allows them to do what they do. And some of that chemistry, we might have even lost some of the genes for originally producing some of that chemistry and have to have the chemistry to be there to support producing itself.
right, as much as it is due to like the genes themselves and what their products are, there's an equally significant element, if not more important element, of how and where those genes are expressed under certain conditions, and how.
Context. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, if you for example, if you took the DNA out of an elephant, out of us, one say for example, you got a fertilized gamete from an elephant, so you've got something that should be able to grow into an elephant, and then you take a fertilized gamete from a pine tree and you pull its DNA out of it and replace it with the DNA from that elephant. I don't know whether or not that would reproduce. It probably would. It
well,
might not because the cell chemistry is so different, but it wouldn't produce an elephant, it wouldn't produce a pine tree, and it probably wouldn't even produce a viable multicellular life form that would live beyond the like really early stages.
let
It
me
would be a eukaryote.
let me modify your example. Right. So let's say you have two strands of DNA that you know are identical. Right. That say it's a strand of elephant DNA and a strand of human DNA. Right.
Okay. And you're saying there's no differences in that particular strand.
Right. There's no differences in the DNA at all.
In the order. Okay.
Right. Within the precise sequence, they're conserved precisely. You still cannot necessarily insert DNA from an elephant into a human oocyte cell and have it reproduce. And part of that is because
if you could put it in its full context, yeah, if the sequence is identical, yeah, it would reproduce. What it may or may not do is function properly, because that might depend on how it's folded and what other things besides the base pairs are attached to that DNA as part of the complex molecule, because DNA isn't just those base pairs. There's other stuff.
Let's go more basic. Let's go more basic than that, right? At least in eukaryotic life, what happens with the DNA is, okay, even if you have a precise sequence, right, things like chromatin bind DNA in specific ways and
right.
kind of package it together into various chromosomes, and those chromosomes.
Yeah, that's why I said what I did. If you're talking about a fertilized gamete and a fertilized gamete, I don't know for certain, but probably it would work. If you took a chromosome out of an elephant that was identical to a human, which they don't have, but I mean, if you did that and put it into the human, yeah, it would work. As a matter of fact, there's a reasonable chance you could take a chromosome out of an elephant that wasn't identical to a human and insert it in a human and still actually get a viable human with an extra elephant chromosome.
That's interesting to me, huh? Because I think it's as much of it I would think that as much as it is due to genetic similarity in terms of like sequence identity, that there also has to be compatibility within chromosome structure. And
Yeah, well, that comes to, like you said, the folding, the things that attach to it, and you know, if you take a skin cell, for example, and you revert that skin cell back to a pluripotent stem cell, basically you have a fertilized gamete, and
Right.
you know, that's, you know, that's how they do cloning, and if you did that with a human cell, and you know, you got a cell ready for cloning, but you say, oh well, the laws in my area don't allow cloning humans, but I want to see how this chromosome develops. Yeah, you could maybe take that chromosome and stick it into a fertilized elephant egg or a fertilized chicken egg, or you know, something else, and observe some of its chemical reactions. You know, what you would get as a result of that, well, we won't know until we actually do the
Big
experiment,
problem
because
is
it's
what you
that
would get.
complex. Possibly.
Big problem.
Elephants and humans are close enough to the same. If you did it with an elephant, there's a pretty good chance that you would get an elephant who's maybe as different as like a human with Down syndrome is from an ordinary human. It's just an extra chromosome. I mean, you know, you might have some very noticeable human traits.
I don't think it would go that way. I think it would just be the chances of anything like that coming to term would be very, very tiny.
I don't really know.
I
I wouldn't say they'd be a great chance, but I don't think it would necessarily be all that small either, because you still have all of the DNA necessary for that life form. What you have is a little extra, which may or may not interfere in certain ways.
Yeah,
and provided that interference didn't mess things up too badly, yeah, there's still some reasonable chance it could be viable. But you know, but in the process of getting there, you would find out stuff. For example, if it wasn't viable, you might be able to track the chemical paths that kept it from being viable and say, okay, well, if we remove this gene, that won't happen, and maybe it'll make it a little farther.
Let's try this. Okay, you bring the elephant, I'll bring the sperm.
I'd rather cross.
You were going to get nailed by Maddox before.
I'd rather cross an elephant and a pine tree, just to, you know, just because Kent Hovind said it can't be done.
It would be an interesting. It would be. Well, I think they've done a lot of that stuff with. I'm not sure how much of that exo stuff they are, you know, transferring from one organism to another. They have done some of that, like with Drosophila. I mean, they've done a lot with Drosophila.
Yeah. Well, we learn a lot from such experiments.
And Thaliana and what is it, E. coli and C. elegans, and I mean they have the thing is that we've got like 5 things that we really worked on the embryology for, and we need about 20 more. So
yeah, there are the common ones that are easy to take care of and reproduce fast.
Fruit flies.
So there is one thing I know that they've done, and that is so some people don't have genes that code for insulin properly, so you get rather defunct gene of insulin.
Yeah.
So in situ, so what they've done actually is using Drosophila melanogaster. What they've done is they've identified the insulin equivalent gene that that Drosophila uses. They've spliced it out, amplified it, and what they've done in an embryo.
Is it a bacteria or something?
No, in humans actually.
Oh,
so
okay. I was jumping ahead.
Yeah. So in a human embryo, what they've done is they have managed to essentially perform molecular surgery. So they have so they've spliced out the portion of the gene that, or there's a portion of human DNA that codes for the defunct insulin gene, that the one that doesn't work, and they've replaced it successfully with
a section of fruit fly DNA.
Right.
Yeah.
And it does work.
Yeah. Well, so-called artificial insulin actually is produced by bacteria, E. coli bacteria, I believe it is. actually using the gene from humans. So if they wanted to, actually, they could have even taken the human gene from those bacteria cultures and put that into a human, and they'd have a ready supply of human genes that they could get without even having to get a cell sample from a human.
That's pretty cool. What does Maddox the Maddox have to say?
We want to go further.
Because prior to this thing, he was he was laying into me, apparently.
When? Oh yeah.
That's 4 hours long, that video.
Yeah, but he only talks for a few minutes about us.
You said he said something more stupid, and I'm looking forward to that.
But when did I say? I think I said y'all were wrong, but I don't think I said y'all were irrational or anything like that.
I thought you said something like that.
No, I only make claims about. Okay, they said they did this that was irrational. They did this. I don't say this person is generally irrational.
I
and there are
thought
cases
you
where I
had said
can't
something
reason
like-
with people.
I thought you had said something like that as well, but it may have been that you worded something in a way that I took that way. It's a possibility, and so
I don't really remember. I was wondering if anyone could quote me, but
I couldn't. I am saying though, it seemed to me I did perceive something you said that way, but I couldn't tell you what the words were.
On this exact topic and use that little blurb as a inspiration, because
Should I
I'm
speed him
like,
up?
man, if Evos are this ignorant about basic mechanics and manufacturing and production, I don't know how they put their pants on in the morning and tie their shoes if they're actually this ignorant or this consciously stupid in terms of framing of their arguments. I mean, a machine or mechanical device is a mechanical structure that uses power to apply forces and control movement to perform an intended action. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's amazing. And then for him to go on about this part, ladies and gentlemen, when I come to this video, you're going to want to watch it because it's going to be very entertaining. The discussion about how unless the outcome is 100% perfect all the time, then it's not a machine. And I'm just like, there is literally no manufacturing process machine on this planet that operates 100% efficiently every time, never has error. If that were the case, we wouldn't need quality control.
That's foreskin.
Total misreading of the paper.
That wasn't even the point, right? It's that it's not about the ability of the machine to recognize a result. It's that when a machine does recognize a result, it provides a specific response to the inputs, right? That was the point that was trying to be conveyed here. But clearly, Maddox the genius didn't catch that one.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think the paper we were reading referred to or gave the same definition of machine that Maddox gave, but I could be wrong on that one.
And they're talking about cells as being self-organizing, self-assembling, and that making them very unlike the machine paradigm. What the paper talks about is the idea of a machine paradigm, or the machine analogy, and how it's failing, and how it's basically, because our methods of research are changing, it's changing our ideas of the cell being a machine, and that in turn again changes our methods of research.
Yeah. Well, I could be mistaken, but something I understood from the paper, at least the way I understood the paper, it seemed to me that they were also, and I think even more so, trying to say that looking at it as a machine was damaging our ability to understand it correctly, to delve more deeply into aspects of the cell that are not machine-like, and that we could learn something by dropping that analogy. Not necessarily, doing it away with it completely, but by looking at the cell without that analogy.
Yeah, there's this new paradigm of both bottom up and top down hierarchical, multiple hierarchies interacting with each other that is emerging, or has been emerging in biology for 30 years. And it kind of relates a little bit to one of the things that Danny may have been pushing back on. But anyway, so let's move on a little here. And the machine paradigm doesn't help us with that, is what they're saying.
Like protocols and structures and error correction. I mean, it's just
Mind blowing.
Anyway, Danny, welcome to the stream, my friend. You were just dealing with the madness over there. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How about you, sir?
I'm exhausted. It's been a long day, but
Why? Working stuff?
Yeah, work, and I'm in the process of moving, so I've had a lot of stuff going on. But all good, all good. I was actually driving home and listening to the madness.
Yeah, there's a lot to listen to.
I was getting so much. I wasn't gonna do. I had no intention to do a stream, and then I'm like listening to that garbage, and it's like, what are these people arguing over? And here, okay, so real question for you on this. So I know you have obviously been around and listened to more than a few of the "is it code, is it not code" arguments, right? I felt like I was hearing the well. This what I'm about to say also applies to like objective versus subjective morality, right? I'm like, so
how does it apply to
it's
that?
like with laws, they're objectively subjective, and then morals, they're 100%.
Come on, here we go.
What does that mean?
What the fuck does that even mean?
Objectively subjective.
I was confused.
Yeah, okay, I'm sure you were. Good.
It sounds like he's talking about laws as in the legal system, because that's why we have lawyers, because those are objectively subjective.
Oh my God!
They're open to the interpretation of the lawyer, the interpretation of the judge, the interpretation of the jury, because they are prescriptive, not descriptive, and they don't do a very good job in general of prescribing clearly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If that's what he meant, I'm okay with that. So.
Yeah, I have a feeling he was conflating those kinds of laws with scientific laws.
No, but it looks like a code, and I'm like, I feel like when there's
really
the back and forth you were having with them about laws and such, I felt like I was listening to a round robin jumping around of like all three of those positions that I just was talking about being applied to the point you were making about laws and such. You follow that where I'm going with that?
Well, what confuses me is that, like, I first of all, I think I reject that there are laws in the strict sense of biology. I don't think that makes any sense. Because if we
and most biologists would agree with that.
If we were to like let's say there's some kind of law, right, or principle that they produce, right? It seems like we could observe something that seems to go against the law, but then none of biology would change, right? So like if I gave the example of a fruit fly being produced totally naturalistically, but not from another life form, okay? What is that going to? How are the biologists going to change their methodology and their theories? They're not, right?
Yeah, they would.
So, and I think that the idea was that hypothetical seemed to go against certain kinds of a principle that Erica was trying to put forth. But the point is the overall point I was thinking is that there are no laws. There are no.
That's why I was saying with your tornado analogy, we'd have to take a closer look at weather, not biology.
Yeah. Did anybody tell you about foreskin? If you want us to stop a video, you say foreskin very loudly, and none of us remember why that is, but that's our safe word.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so you say foreskin.
I was just responding to the past.
we should update that rule.
No, we don't change rules. It's a law.
It's a law.
It's a
okay, so I haven't heard me doing any name calling, Speed. I haven't said anything negative about you.
Oh, wait a minute. You're talking about trolling us a little later on, like you're.
No, let's hear it. I didn't think I said that either. No principles of biology. At best, there's something called ceteris paribus laws, which is like, given XYZ ABC conditions, we would expect this, right?
All laws.
But then that just means that we could have, that means that if something were to operate outside of it, that we could see something different, right? And I don't know where that puts. I don't know the exact.
Isn't that all laws?
No.
Well, actually, I'm not commenting on what Danny's saying, but I'm thinking that Maddox is having Danny on because when Danny uses all these big words, he thinks it makes him look smarter.
Maybe. Yeah, I think he failed to
be
understand
surprised.
you. He failed to understand what you were saying about 3 times. It was kind of funny. So
He also failed to understand like what the paper we were reading kind of
yeah,
suggests.
he did. He completely.
Yeah, and I have a question. Danny, may I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
Throughout that conversation, did you get the impression that he had read that Nicholson paper on Is the Cell a Machine? Had he himself read it?
Oh, I don't know anything about that. I haven't read it. I don't know anything about that
Okay.
dialectic. So I'm not. I
Because
don't.
if somebody were criticizing or wanting, if I were wanting to criticize somebody else's reading or approach to a particular paper,
Yeah,
I
you
would
might
in
want to read the
fact
paper first.
pull it out, at least skim the paper,
Yeah.
but probably do more than that. And I was just wondering if you got that impression, if he read it or not.
It doesn't seem like he did.
Okay. Anyway, I don't want to go any further with this. We're going to wrap up here soon.
Oh, but you're not going to exonerate me?
No.
No,
I
we've
will.
dealt with you enough.
No.
I didn't say anything mean.
Okay,
that
Danny.
would
or-
actually
I'll make
that
a
would
promise,
actually-
Danny. I will. I will.
that would actually
indict
take
you.
going all the way through all 4 hours. So yeah.
Yeah, I will indict you later after I find some clips. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We're
And
gonna
then,
Yeah,
do
at least then,
and then-
at least
then
then
we
you
can
can,
exonerate
you can
you.
argue him or whatever,
And then we can
or
exonerate.
clarify.
But the point is that I never said anything negative about any individual, or even the group.
Oh no,
of
you
the
just
stream.
talk about atheists in general. You're-
Naturalism. I was being.
Yeah, there you go.
I did
There
say
we
that
go.
naturalism is untenable. I like attacking it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I did say stuff like that, but
What
that-
about it? I'm curious because I
Okay,
don't know
well,
what your view is.
Danny, you
of
call
what
it. Oh, I can point you to a clip deck, but don't get them started right now.
Let's
It's-
not,
Oh, okay,
please.
if you say so.
Yeah. I
it's
will
Maybe some other
incoherent.
time.
Uh,
I'm
yeah,
curious
you-
how, but yeah, he says not to get you started, so some
put
other
a clip-
time.
I'll put a clip. We're going to do that. We're definitely going to do it. But I'll put a clip to that video that you gave me. And where the hell is it? I'll put it in the description. The Pine Creek thing. Basically, you had an argument against naturalism. It's about 10 minutes long. I'll put it in the description of this video deck. Go listen to
Okay.
it. You'll love it. It was wonderful. I was thrilled. Okay.
You better get a nap in before we have to start doing this review part 2 at 8.
Yeah, because I'm feeling kind of sick, to tell you the truth right now. I think it's
No,
blood.
that's at 8 Eastern time, 7
Well, you
Central.
better get unsick.
I know. Or I'm going to be in trouble with Immutable.
No, I was just going to say that we're going to declare Danny Schrodinger's philosopher, and
Yeah.
the status of his exoneration is indeterminate. He's neither exonerated nor not
No,
exonerated.
I will say
Right.
that if I called anyone stupid,
Pending.
irrational, or if I just made a generalized claim about your intellect, I've said before, I don't. It's just me being emotional. I don't mean it, and I should apologize if it's the case that. Yeah, I didn't say anything like that.
Can we
Okay.
spank you if you did that? Can we?
Yes, please spank me if you did that. I don't. I have said that before to other people. But I don't. I literally don't know what it what it means. But something like I don't like you, or I don't know what you're saying.
Now, I've been known to call people a dumbass here and there, but remember, I'm a demonic hyena. So that's
Yeah.
what you would expect of me.
Hyenas.
I don't think I've ever been called a dumbass, but I get called a smartass an awful lot.
Yeah.
I
It's-
just tell them,
that's a
well, you got to keep.
compliment.
I just tell them, well, you got to keep the spare brain somewhere.
That's a compliment. Smart ass.
Smart people store their brains in computers.
Yeah. And I got a lot of them in those, and most of them are scattered around the country. I'll never see them again.
Poor thing.
Some of them not even in this country.
Yeah.
I've left my brains all over the world.
Okay. So let's wrap it up today, okay?
All right.
All right.
That took 2 hours. Okay,
So
we're
what's
gonna
this
leave.
quote on the bottom here?
We're gonna leave you
What a
cruel
strange
world.
experience it must be to be on the same
Room
same
with
room with him
Maddox.
and not experience vitriol. What's vitriol?
Vitriol.
Vitriol.
Oh, okay. I have my reading glasses on, but I can still barely see that text even with my reading glasses on. I'm going, what's that word?
Yep, he would get irritated with you as long as you call him Sir Maddox. And anyway, Danny, around here, it's called Sir Naturalism.
All right, I got.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, we're going to end the broadcast. Goodbye, cruel world. We'll see you tomorrow.